really, I'm gonna have to start again. My mother was 3.5 days in labor. And and I was number 8. So you don't take that long to have a baby when it's number 8 unless there's something going on. So 3.5 days, and when I was born upside down, backwards, feet first. Now, anybody who's had a lot of babies knows that once you develop a way the baby lays that way every time. So I turned and wouldn't come out. Okay? So this was something going on in me while I was in the womb of my mom. So over the course of my lifetime, I always wondered why I had this sort of I had some strange stuff, and I'll tell you about that later. But how this all came to a head, I'm fast forwarding, how this all came to a head, no, maybe I shouldn't fast forward. When I was a little kid, my sister teased me one day about being adopted. And I went hysterical, I went into hysteria about being adopted. And I wasn't adopted, my sister was just teasing me, but why did that affect me so much? And then, let's see, how does the story go? I can't remember all the progressions. I guess I'll just jump forward. When I was about 44 years old, my brother had a conversation with me about something we had done with my mother when I was 5 years old. We had driven her to a clinic and left her there for the weekend. I said, yeah, I remember that. And he said, well, you know that we took Mom to have an abortion. Huh? And I said, no. And he said, oh, that's right, we did. And I said, oh, that's odd, because the whole thing was so odd about her being there. And my mom and I would occasionally get in conversations about abortion, and she would defend it every time. And I would say, Mother, how do you say that? It's murder. I mean, it's... And she would just defend it. She'd get very upset. And when I delivered my 7th baby, after I had my 7th baby, I said to my mom one day, I said, man, I just got to thank you for having me. I mean, just wow, just what a lot of work. And she said, what? Why did you say that? Why did you say that? And I said, well, I get it, you know, and this is a lot of work. This is not a walk in the park. This is stuff. I mean, this is a lot of work. And she said, yes, but why did you say that? I said, I just wanted to show you gratitude. You actually brought me into the work. I mean, that's a lot of stuff. And so for years and years and years, I had dreams that, like at least twice in 1 week, I would have a dream that I was being pursued, and it was always a man. I was being chased by a man, and I would have to hide. And my dreams, it was amazing at hiding. Don't ever play hide and go seek with me, because I will beat you every time. I am really good at hiding. And I mean good. And I would hide in these dreams, but they were scary, because this man that was pursuing me was up to no good, wanted to hurt me in some way. It was always a different man, but it was always a man. And so my mother had told me at some point, several times, over the course of my life, that she was using 4 forms of birth control when she conceived me. So I knew that I wasn't wanted. Now there's something different that happens to somebody when they come into the world knowing that they're not wanted and they're not really supposed to be here. There's just a different sort of psyche you develop. But I didn't put all of it together until I was taking, before I did Evox, I used, for years I used a product, it has a very similar name, but I used a product that helps connect the subconscious mind to the conscious mind. It's a product that just has chakra frequency and Bach and Bush flower remedies and color therapy, and it has a lot of emotional modality in it. And I used it for years, and after I'd been on it for about 5 or 6 months, I had gotten up to a pretty high number. I was using it, and just use it before you go to bed. I woke up one morning and I had a ta-da moment. That's the only way I can describe what happened. It was a moment where my subconscious mind, sort of that dream state mind, meets your conscious mind, and I had a knowing. I connected everything. I went, oh my gosh, that's why I have these dreams. I'm afraid of this man who's trying to pursue me, to kill me, because I have this fear that goes way back to and I realized, I just woke up and realized my mother had talked about aborting me. And it made sense when I made the connection, because she had aborted the baby right after me. She had told me herself she didn't want me. She was 3.5 days in the womb. I was afraid to come out. This ankle cracks every time I do that. And this is the ankle the doctor grabbed to pull me out. There's an emotional connection to that ankle. And when I made the connection in the morning, my subconscious mind and my conscious mind, I quit having the dreams. I got it. I mean, I understood it. My mother passed away about 5 years ago, Aubrey, or something like that. I didn't cry a tear at her funeral. And she was an amazing woman. I have deep respect for her. I loved her very much. But there was a little bit of an emotional disconnect somehow there, which is odd because I respect her greatly. She really was, in so many ways, a tremendous, tremendous woman. And I miss her. But, you know, there is something that happens to a baby in the womb when they know they're not wanted. They go through, like, do you know what muscle testing is? You put your arm up and somebody pushes it. Okay. So muscle testing looks like a lie detector test. And I was at a conference once, and somebody was trying to prove something about muscle testing, and they asked me these basic questions. Do you want to be healed? Yes. And I was firm. Do you deserve to be, do you deserve to be wealthy? I think they asked. And yep, no problem there. Do you deserve to be, all these things that some people have big hangs. Do you deserve to be well, or do you just, it's something like, do you deserve to be here? And I was like, it shocked me. But I realized there's this deep undercurrent in a baby that doesn't, so I've had to I think that's probably why I have the passion I have for emotional things, because I know that I've had to overcome a lot of deep insecurities, I mean, that go way back to not even being wanted. And so I kind of feel that with people. When I work with them, I can kind of feel when they have that pain, and when that pain is a hindrance to their healing. Because if you have that kind of deep emotional pain, or you can have joints lock up, and you can have real physiology, but it's often a reflection of the emotion. So if you don't work through the emotional pain, a lot of times you don't get to the physical.
Do you think she actually tried to abort you at one time and wasn't able to?
She may have tried, but I think she thought about it a lot and really wrestled with it, and then decided not to, but I was in so much fear. And fear is the deepest emotional connection to diabetes. And she had diabetes, and I had hypoglycemia, and there really wasn't a family history with that. And, you know, these things, there's connections to this emotional stuff. You just got to make the connections. Because you can talk about products and you can talk about stuff all day long, but man, when you get right down to the emotional stuff, that's where it's at. That's where it's at. And you know, and you got to realize, like when I look at my mother, I mean, I understand her pain, and I understand where she was coming from, and she was overwhelmed. This was her, you know, 8th and then 9th child, and she was growing up in an era when women were trying to, you know, become somebody, and you know, it was just it was her stuff, and she was trying to work through it all. And we only do what we know to do at the time. Most of us do the best with the knowledge we have. And my mother softened over the years, and I know she grieved over it. I know she grieved over that abortion, and I know she paid for that, and it was hard on her. And you know, I don't fault her for any of that. It was her path. It was her journey, and it helped me be who I am. But it's been a road. It's been a journey, you know. But we can't ignore this emotional stuff. And another thing that we can't ignore is psychological pain. And usually the emotional stuff triggers the psychological stuff. And if you ever notice how nobody wants to talk about mental illness, is that all? You know, what's that all? Nobody wants to talk about mental illness. We just want to shove it in a room somewhere. Mental illness is often triggered from emotional pain, deep-seated emotional pain. So anyway, I was supposed to talk today. Because I've never spoken to this group before, I just do a fair amount of emphasis on what electrodermal screening is, in case you don't know what that is, and talk about that in a little bit of detail, as well as some offshoots of that. But before we go there, it's really, well, I suppose before we go there at all, let me just tell you a little bit about myself, why I'm doing what I'm doing, how I got where I'm. It's really weird for me up here. Am I getting a feedback or something? You guys get it? Okay. So I have been health conscious, at least where diet is concerned, pretty much all my life, because I had both my parents were diabetic, and I had hypoglycemia. Thank you. Had hypoglycemia as a child, which is a forerunner to diabetes. So I figured out real young I could go outside and eat sauerkraut and feel like $1,000,000, and go inside and eat a piece of cake and feel awful. So one thing led to another, and over the course of my lifetime, I just determined it was really important to eat right. But after a while, you figure out that you still have stuff that happens whether you eat right or not. So you have to go a lot deeper than just diet. And eventually I started studying the cause of disease, because you can't cure anything if you don't know the cause. So it's really important to know the cause. And at some point along the way, I started realizing that we are sick because we're toxic and we're low on nutrition, period. So, in fact, for years, I was telling somebody earlier, for years I studied parasites, and I thought there was a strong connection between parasites. I don't know if it's just because I'm so sensitive to electromagnetic fields or what it is, but I'm definitely feeling something here. Sorry about that. I'm going to get away. Okay. There we go. I'm a canary in a coal mine. I just feel every little thing. I don't know what it is. I guess that's why I'm in this field. I started realizing that, we're not born sick typically. We're born well, and over a lifetime we get sick, and we just blame it on the aging process. But why do some of us age so gracefully, and some of us age with pain and heartache and everything else? And so I started really seeing the connection between toxicity and how it plays out. But toxins are a funny thing. When someone talks to you about toxicity, typically you think about being exposed to chemical exposure, or food toxins, or whatever. But toxins come in a lot of packages. And I mean, you can have toxic emotions that make you acidic. You can eat a 95% raw diet and be acidic because of your emotions. So that's a big area to understand. And when I learned that your subconscious mind rules your health, wow, if that's true, if your subconscious mind rules your health, we better deal with emotions, and we better deal with the subconscious effects, because when you sleep, your subconscious mind is in ascendancy and your conscious mind is asleep. So if you have trauma that was imprinted on you as far back as the womb, or when you were a very small child, you can play that out in your mind all night long when you sleep. You never really get over it unless you learn how important it is and learn how to address that. And so, for example, when I studied schizophrenia, and to a certain degree, not to a great degree, but I started learning that schizophrenics die at a fairly young age. I mean, they usually, if they live to be in their late 50s, that's old for a schizophrenic. Yet schizophrenics are some of the healthiest people on the planet. So why do they die young? I believe there's a connection between the anxiety and the fear and the trauma in their subconscious mind and not really sleeping well, and eventually it wears them out. You can think a thought and produce a tear. You can get embarrassed and get a red face. That quick, just in a moment, you can immediately have a physiological effect from an emotion. So if you can produce a red face from getting embarrassed, what's to say you can't have a heart attack because of a heart pain? That's not a big leap. Really, that's not a big leap. So whenever I see people who have emotional heart pain, they have physical heart trouble. It just goes hand in hand. So this has been studied out to the nth degree. There are whole books written on the physiological effect of emotional stuff. And it's just fascinating work. Because at the core of who we are, I mean, what runs our engine usually is, our emotions run our engine a lot more than even food we eat. But we don't take charge of that. We don't pay attention to that. We don't realize we have to feed our emotions in a healthy way. You know, we want to feed our body in a healthy way with our food, but we don't think about the importance of feeding our emotions. But we all know that if you think angry thoughts, you grow more angry. If you feed a grudge, it grows, right? So if you're God-fearing people, you realize that in Philippians it says that what we're supposed to think on, whatever is good and lovely and a good report, if there's any praise, if there is any virtue, think on these things. And in the scripture also says, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. It didn't say as he thinks in his head, as he thinks in his heart. So we are very much the byproduct of what we think, of what we feel, of what we believe. So I'll give you a little story about how fascinating the mind is. This is a funny one to me because this is something I actually saw on television. It was like on 60 Minutes or something. There was a show about a man who had a heart transplant. Anybody know where I'm going with this? Anybody see this on 60 Minutes? Okay. This man had a heart transplant, and he kept having a reoccurring dream. And in his dream, he was driving down a road in his neighborhood, and he would go to a house that he had seen before, and he would break into this house, and he went up the stairs, and he raped and murdered a woman. And this was a reoccurring dream that he had over and over and over again. And he had received a heart transplant, and he could not get over the thought that the heart he got was from a man who had raped and murdered this woman. So he finally went to the police with it. And he said, I know this is going to sound like the craziest thing you ever heard, but I believe I got a heart from a guy who murdered this woman. And so I would like to drive you to the house that I see in my dream repeatedly, and I would like to describe what's in that house in detail, and I promise I've never been in that house, and I would like to describe that murder in detail. And then if you will investigate the heart that I got and where that guy was that night, and if he already was a criminal and had a record, we might be able to put this thing together, and I might be able to get a good night's sleep. And so that's exactly what happened. They found out this man actually was the one who had raped and murdered this woman, and he had not been convicted, but they were able to put enough pieces together to figure it out. So that is, as a man thinks in his heart. There's a brain in your heart. There's what's called cellular memory. Every part of your body is connected to every other part of your body. So you can't just remove an organ and have it not, take somebody else's organ and not have it affect you. It's a fascinating story, but this plays out in very real ways, because if you're constantly plagued with a reoccurring dream, a lot of times there's a reason for it. So if you're plagued with an illness, there might be a reason for it. So in the circles in my world, and in the world I live in, and the peers I run with, and the conferences I go to, and the information I'm exposed to, indicates that we should maybe change the way we think about disease, about cancer, about big labels, and maybe reframe that, and maybe ask the question, why do I have this? It's not such a squirrely question when you think about it in detail. What purpose is this cancer serving me? What can I learn from this? Is there a lesson in it? Is there something that needs to change about me? How many times have you known of someone to get cancer treatment, be pronounced free of cancer, just have it back in 6 months? So either they destroyed not only the cancer but the person's immune system, or they successfully destroyed the cancer, but whatever caused the cancer to come to begin with just came back again because the person never dealt with the emotional pain that caused the cancer to begin with. So I've done some study under a man who, a doctor or an oncologist, who was he was just a standard of care oncologist. He didn't wasn't anywhere near an alternative doctor, but his son died overnight in a tragic auto accident, and 2 months later he had prostate cancer. And he said, look, I've been doing my own biomarkers and I didn't have anything close to cancer. It's not even possible to get prostate cancer in 2 months. No, he had testicular cancer. And so he started interviewing his patients and his colleagues' patients and asking them if there was an emotional root or emotional, he didn't put it that way, emotional trauma prior to the onset of their cancer. And in every case there was. And so he started jotting what type of cancer it was and what the emotional pain was. Type of cancer, the emotional pain, because he wanted to see if there was any kind of reoccurring pattern. And sure enough, he saw a reoccurring pattern. He saw that with everyone who had any kind of cancer associated with a reproductive organ, there was some connection with what he called nesting conflict. In other words, something happened to a child that came from your loins. Either they just got a divorce or they just passed away or the house just burned down or some major trauma. And I would take it a step further because I've seen people who have never had children. A woman who had developed cancer in her mid-20s, and she hadn't had children, but she'd been repeatedly molested by her stepfather, and she developed ovarian cancer. And then later in life, when she had another emotional trigger, the man who helped her get through the cancer, a close friend who had helped her, he'd almost become like a surrogate father almost. He'd helped her get through this trauma. And then he passed away when she was about 40. And her cancer came back when he passed away. So you work in this field long enough, you see enough of these connections to emotional roots, and you start putting the dots together. We are much more affected by our emotions than any other thing we do. Any other thing we do. We put a lot of focus on diet, nutrition, and this and that, but at the end of the day, our emotions rule. Now, what makes it even more difficult today, now this has always been the case, but we live in a much more toxic world today. So our emotions don't have to work so hard to put us in the grave today. We are, it's more obvious what the emotional triggers are because we're already, the burden on our body is so much greater. So we're living in a world where electromagnetic fields, radiation, cell towers, carrying around cell phones, I had a client come in one time and he says, I don't know what's wrong with me, but I got this pain over here all the time. I said, well, you got a cell phone in that pocket? He said, well, yeah, that's where I carry my cell phone. I said, well, why don't you take it out? I said, they upcharge those phones every 7 seconds. He said, oh, okay. He takes it out, puts it in the other pocket. He comes back in a couple months later. I got this pain over here. I don't know where it's coming from. I said, got that cell phone in your pocket? Yeah, I do. Puts it in his shirt pocket. And I've been having heart palpitations. I said, you are not very smart. But, it's just the world and that's a true story, by the way, believe it or not. But that's the world we live in. If you sleep in a bedroom where you got clock radios on either side of you and a TV right in front of your bed, and you got a power pole with a transformer right outside your window, and you got you're charging your cell phone, and you got a air purifier, and all this stuff that has strong fields. I mean, just the radio waves that we're exposed to, just the microwaves we're exposed to. It's so much greater than it was even 40 or 50 years ago. And the quality of the food you don't need to hear this. You guys hear this all the time, but on so many different levels, we've got a lot of toxic load to resist. So you pile emotions on top of that, and of course we live in a much more stressful world. But it's very interesting how the body, when you start learning the connections between your physiology and how your emotions and how it plays out in your physiology, it becomes a very fascinating study, because every part of your body, I actually wasn't going to teach a class on emotions first, but here I am. Just jumped right in there, didn't I? I do that with emotions because it's probably my favorite subject. So I guess I better start my last class first here, since I'm already halfway into it. So if I have a client that comes in and she's saying, man, I always have pain on my right side. I mean, it seems like all my aches and pains are on my right side. My right hip hurts, my right knee hurts, my right elbow hurts, everything's on my right side. I'll say, man, you got a female in your life that's just, left. I'm pointing to my left. I'm saying right. I'll say, man, you got a female in your life that's just driving you nuts, don't you? Her eyes will get real big and she'll say, I sure do. And then we'll go into a conversation about what's going on. If I have another person come in and everything's right-sided, very often, and it's consistent. Not just they just fell and hurt their hip or whatever, but it's consistently, they're constantly having pain on the right side. There's probably a male in their life that's driving them nuts. You can even look at parts of the body and see how this plays out. So I'll give you a little story, several stories. So I have a woman who came to see me, and we did a procedure that for emotional remediation that I do called EVOX. So it's E stands for emotion, VOX is the Latin word for voice. You carry all your emotions in your voice intonation, and when you talk, you actually express emotions through your voice. So technology is at a point where we can measure the emotional conflict in the voice. So there's a tonal value that expresses certain emotions, and it actually can be mapped. So with my EVOX machine, I do this procedure where the person speaks into the computer, talks for 10 seconds on the topic, it maps the emotions, and then we play back the mirror image frequency of the vibrational patterns missed in their voice. So they've got their hand on the hand cradle, and it's actually playing back. There's this period of time that it plays back those missing notes. And we've got music playing just to distract them during that time. But then we go back to the 10-minute output, and then the 10-minute speaking, and then the output. So this goes on until we get a releasing pattern, and it's profound, the effect this has on people. It's just unbelievable. I'll tell you stories you might have a hard time believing. It's just profound. But what it'll do, it'll map a chart that looks, this is just one wheel in a very large chart. So I'll get this clock-like visual that has 12 sections, and each of the sections represents a different emotion. And the color represents intensity. So red represents extremely high, yellow is high, then green, then blue, then white. So we pretty much just pay attention to primarily red and yellow. And each of these zones, we call them zones, or the pieces of the pie here, are associated with different emotions. So the emotions are unacknowledged, repetitive thinking, depression, emotional disconnect, self-critical, conditional love, anger, fearful and overwhelmed, suppressed emotions, unworthy or undeserving, and rigid beliefs and conflicting beliefs. So I can either do a single session with a person, or what we call transgenerational, where we do a session on the primary people that have impacted the person's perceptions in life. Mother, father, the grandparent that naps in highest, spouse, and self. So that would be 5 separate sessions. It takes 5 weeks to do that. We only do 1 session a week. So the whole purpose of EVOX is for shifting your perception. So change your perception, change your world. This doesn't have to be about emotional pain. It can be about something like improving your golf score. If you're self-sabotaging your golf game because you're afraid it's going to take away from family time and mess up your family, you'll just not play well even though you have the opportunity to do really well. Say you're about to become a professional golf player, but you just keep messing up and your family's saying, no, it's okay, you can do this, but you can't seem to do it because of fear. You could do an EVOX session on it, and it's amazing how it helps you overcome it. I've just had crazy and neat stories about it. But anyway, I had this woman, I had to give you that foundation to tell you this story. And I tell a lot of stories about experiences I've had because I believe it's not facts and statistics that are really what we need to measure for success. You know, Jesus said you know a tree by the fruit. So you know, it's the results that matter in life. You can skew statistics. Whenever I'm talking to medical doctors, they'll say, show me the statistics. But when I'm talking to people in the real world, they say, hey, do you know where I can go, where I can get some results? You know, if you go to if you're looking for a good hairdresser, you find somebody who has a haircut you like. You say, where'd you go? You know, if you want to find somebody who's going to give you some good results, you find somebody who's gotten good results. So I love stories because they tell you whether something works or not. And if you work in this field for any length of time, you quickly realize the strong connection between emotional stuff and how it plays out in your physiology. So you just kind of eventually get drawn to this area. But anyway, I was working with this woman, and we were doing transgenerational. We'd done a session on father, and her father had been very inappropriate with her, let me put it that way. And she had figured out over the course of her life she had to forgive him. She had worked through it. She had truly forgiven him. So it was a pretty mellow session. Nothing dramatic. She got through it very, very fast. It was great. The next week we did a session on mother. And her mother had not supported her when she'd blown the whistle on her father. So her unforgiveness and her anger was towards her mother, not her father, even though her father had been the one who had caused the problem to begin with. But she knew she had to forgive her father, and she'd worked through it. But her mother, doggone it, should have supported her. That was the way she felt, and so she just couldn't forgive her mother. But she didn't even realize this was all sort of unconscious thinking that was going on in her, and she didn't realize it. So she has a terrible limp, and while she was doing the session, and she was talking about her mother, and when she had come in that day, she said, man, I'm hurting more than I normally do. And during the middle of the session, I'm going, oh my goodness, our hips represent our support in life, and who supports us. She knew she was going to do the session on mother, and subconsciously, it had actually triggered almost like not a healing crisis, but an effect before we even started. And so we did this session on mother. She worked through it, imprinted back the imbalances for that. And she has not had the same limp since. It's amazing. This is my favorite story on EVOX. I had a woman who came to see me. She also did transgenerational. Her first session was on her mother. And she left. When she was done, she left, and she emailed me that night. She said, I've just got to tell you what happened to me today. You won't believe it. She said, but first I have to tell you that 13 years ago, I was on vacation, and I got sick, and I went to a osteopath. And the osteopath checked me all over and said, all your problems are locked up in your jaw. All your physiology, all your electrical components that are off, they're all locked up in your jaw. If I could just correct you, if I had 2 weeks to work on your jaw, I could correct everything about you. And she went, what? I don't have a problem with my jaw. It was totally foreign to her, so she didn't go to him. So then she came 13 years later. She comes to see me to do EVOX. We finished the session. She goes out to her car and picked up her cell phone to call her babysitter and opened her mouth to talk, and her jaw went just cracked and cracked, and she had this sort of rush, this strong electrical rush up and down her body, which will sometimes happen if like if your shoulder's dislocated and you pop it back in, you'll get this real powerful electrical rush because of all the meridians and the reconnect and everything. So she had this incredible electrical charge with everything lining up with this new adjustment. And she drove back to Huntsville, and she said, when I got home, she said, I could barely get home. I was so tired. And a lot of times when you have a big healing process like that, it'll kind of wipe you out. So she said, during the middle of the day, I took a 2-hour nap. I never take a nap. And when I woke up, I felt like $1 million, like I could clean every house in the neighborhood. I was just really going. And she said, but I thought, I've got to call my mom. I've got to tell my mom about this. So she said, I called my mom. And my mom said, oh my gosh, is that why I've been crying for the last 2 hours? So this had impacted my client. And when she did the session on her mother, impacted her mother. So now I'm going to go way out there and explain to you why I believe that happened. Scientists have studied nanoparticles that are so microscopic. They're in our aura, they're in our field, but they're so small, they actually have the ability to move within and without the body. And they've studied these and found that they move in rhythm like a flock of birds. They move in sequence with each other and move out from your body in swirls. And a person who is engaging the world and they're very happy, these nanoparticles actually move out from their field, from their space. But if a person's depressed, they're all in like this, and it creates a lot of pressure, and there isn't much connection with the people around you. So the scientists that did the work on this decided they needed to see if there was any nonverbal communication because of these nanoparticles. So they isolated monkeys and taught them tricks that monkeys had never been taught anywhere in the world, and they kept them isolated from any other monkeys, and I mean isolated by a good distance, by many, many miles. And within 2 months, monkeys in Africa and Asia were doing the tricks that these monkeys had learned in the United States. So there is belief that there is species-to-species communication that's nonverbal and has to do with these nanoparticles. So how many times have you thought about someone and they call you up, or you know, there's this type of communication. So very often when I've had that experience when I've done a session, evoc session with, I did an evoc session with a woman whose daughter was estranged from her, and the daughter wouldn't communicate with her, wouldn't answer her emails, wouldn't have anything to do with her, and 2 days after the evoc session, the daughter contacted her. Did it have anything to do with the evocs? I think so. Could it have been coincidence? Maybe, but there had been no communication, and then all of a sudden, right after this, there was. So I believe there's powerful things that happen in that realm. So this kind of, you know, it seems kind of like space age. It seems way out there, but the intent of our heart can come out in our voice, and it can be mapped with modern technology. And so by mapping that, then what they're doing is giving back the imbalances in the voice to create balance. And so it's actually a treating tool while you're using it. So I'll see people that will start out with a conflict or deep emotional pain about an issue or a person or something in their past, and go through this process, and by the time they're through with it, there's more of a it's no big deal type effect. So if you have, and another thing I've seen is if you have a person who has, they were birthed in the womb of a woman who was going through some conflict. So the woman was going through a divorce when she was carrying the baby, or the woman got pregnant and didn't want the baby, or there was some sort of major, the woman went through a divorce while she was carrying the baby, or some major conflict with the mother when the mother was carrying the baby. That effect, that trauma can be imprinted on that baby. Because babies in the womb, they don't have adult thinking. They're not going, okay, 9 months and I'm out of here. Her stuff's her stuff and my stuff's my stuff and everything's good at the end of the day. That baby is mama, and all that baby can do is feel. The baby doesn't think like an adult, but the baby feels everything the mama feels. So if the mom is full of anxiety, guess what? Nervous mamas make nervous babies. And that sort of nervousness can be imprinted on the psyche, if you will, of that child. So it's very important when you're pregnant to be in peace, you know, to have peaceful circumstances. Because very often the trauma that mother's going through can really flip a trigger in that child and determine an awful lot about how they're able to handle stress, how they feel about the world. I've seen over and over again, babies who weren't wanted are some of the most needy because they go through life without a license, if you will. They don't really feel like they have a license to be on planet Earth. So they
sometimes have a harder time correcting their health. Very often can't be assertive in life because they're not, they don't have the confidence because they don't feel comfortable. They have to kind of fight for everything. So, and sometimes it can do the opposite, it can make them stronger, but these emotional triggers, and they're strong stuff, they're big stuff. I had a woman that came in about a month ago who, you know, the electrodermal testing, which I haven't even really talked to you about much, that's really the primary modality. I do a lot of detox modalities. I do colon hydrotherapy, and I have PEMF mat and biomat. I do biomat treatments, and I do foot detox, and I've got a new toy I brought with me tonight if I had time to show you my new toy. But I do a lot of detox modalities, but the primary modality I do is electrodermal screening. And I'll talk to you about that in a little bit. But I had a woman come to me for electrodermal screening because she's trying to figure out what's wrong with her body and why she was so ill all the time. And everything about the testing, because I run several tests with people before I really go into the test too much, because I'm trying to look at the body through the eyes of different equipment, different practitioners who have written these protocols. I even run one test that's just products in-house, not because I'm necessarily going to sell them these products, but because I want to see if they keep testing for the same type of products so if I see a lot of thyroid products come up and all the other tests are showing a lot of thyroid problems, and this is saying the same thing through different lenses, if you will. So I run about 5 different tests before I really talk too much to the client about what I see that's going on. So I'm running all these tests on this woman, and finally I just sat back and I said, "You are one angry woman." And everything about these tests, and I wasn't even I wasn't doing EVOX, I was just doing EDS testing with her. And there was anger everywhere on these tests. And I said, "Man, you are one angry woman." Because it was obvious to me. I mean, it looked like her physiology was breaking down. I didn't run a carcinoma test on her, but I'll guarantee you she had some pretty high carcinoma numbers because she was mad, just mad. And so I said, "You are angry." She said, "Boy, you got that right." She didn't even begin to deny that. And she said, "Yeah." And it was almost as though she was glad I brought it to light because she didn't have anybody she could talk to about it. She said, "Yeah, my step-grandson molested my granddaughter, and I'm mad as you know what." And I said, "Ooh, okay, we hit a button here." And so, but there was something about it. I knew that if I didn't get some help to her right that day, I probably would never see her again. And she was kind of just trying me out to see if I knew anything or could help her, but she didn't come there for any emotional work, I promise you. She came there because she was in so much pain with arthritis, big pain. And that was making her mad too, but that was why she was there. She came for the arthritis. And so I said, "Well, I'll tell you what." I said, "I'm going to be real blunt with you, and I'm just going to just tell it like I see it, for better or for worse. This is what I think's going on here." And I said, "Your grandson screwed you once when he messed around with your granddaughter. He screwed you twice when he took your health, and he's about to screw you 3 times when he put you 6 feet under." I mean, she was, I'm sorry I have to be so blunt, but she was just the kind of person I had to treat that way, and that's just the way it was. And she said, And I said, "And you know what?" I said, "You got to forgive him. And you got to forgive him not because he deserves it. You got to forgive him because you deserve it. You deserve to be free from this thing. So don't forgive him because he deserves it. Forgive him for you. Right motives, wrong motives, whatever. Just forgive him so you can walk away from this thing because it's killing me." And she said, "You know what? Under those circumstances, I think I can do it. I think I can let go of it." I mean, she just right then made a decision. And she said, "You know, I'll go home and I'll pray about it. I'll do it." But she forgave him right then. Right then. She wasn't on her knees, but in her heart she made a decision. So she was in my clinic for about an hour after that, and she looked at me and she said, I am out of pain. She said, I haven't been out of pain in I don't know how long. She said, but I'm out of pain. I didn't give her one pill, I didn't give her one bottle, I didn't give her anything but hard talk, because that's what she needed. She needed a hard talk about holding on to this. And I just turned it around and I said, look, he's killing you and you're letting him. It's got to stop. And so that's what she needed, right? That was the medicine she needed right then. And, you know, God forgave us and none of us deserved it. So that's when it really, when you really understand forgiveness. When you have to forgive somebody you know does not deserve it. And she knew he didn't deserve it. She wanted to just grab his neck and, you know, wring it. But that's what got her freedom that day. It's amazing. It's a neat story. Let's see. Oh, I had a woman who, she had this little thing with her fingers. Her middle finger would jump like this. And I've studied emotional connections to different parts of the body. And when you understand fingers, this is your worry finger. This is your fear finger. This is your anger finger. I guess you guys have seen that one before. This is your sorrow finger. It's just a shame it's on the finger where you put your wedding ring. But this is your sorrow finger, and this represents pretense. You ever see anybody drink a cup of tea like this, and the little fingers out there?
Oh,
Isn't that interesting?
what did it represent?
Pretense. So, yeah, it's like
The pinky.
it
Yeah.
sort of means pretending. It kind of has an air to it about arrogance.
Okay.
So in babies, they suck their thumbs. You know, who knows whether that has to do with worry or if it's just convenient because it's right there.
What about these two fingers?
Well, this is fear and this is anger.
I have a grandson who does that, but he's the happiest little fellow. That's strange.
And maybe he just likes those fingers. But so this woman, you know, she put her, you could just see her hand sitting there, and this finger, this middle finger was just jump. Well, she had a daughter that was making her extremely angry with her lifestyle. And then she got a little more information about her lifestyle, and the daughter was sleeping around and doing a bunch of stuff that moved her from anger to sorrow. Guess what happened? I can't even make it happen, but anyway, the sorrow finger started jumping. So then her anger finger and her sorrow finger would jump. And she finally had to deal with it, and it stopped. So the lesson here is we can't change our circumstances sometimes, and we can't change the circumstances of other people sometimes, even when we want to, even if it's our children, right? But we can change our outlook about our circumstances, and that can have all the difference in whether we can walk in peace or not. I've got a son who I've picked up his saying. He says, this is one of his favorite sayings, and it's become one of my favorite ones. He says, it's all good. Just about everything. He'll say, it's all good. And I finally figured out what he was doing with that. He was just saying, you know what? It may not feel good, it may not look good, it may not seem like it's good, but there's something good that's going to come out of this. It's our perceptions that have to do with everything. So that's become one of my favorite. It's all good. There's something in this. There's some lesson. There's something at the end of the day I'll be a better person because of this, even if it's a valley experience. And the second favorite one is, I think I'll just let that one go. That's a hard one, you know, to just let stuff go and not let it sit and eat your lunch. So other areas of the body. There's a real crude phrase out there, oh, that really pisses me off. Well, you know what? When you're ticked off, guess what goes? Kidneys. When you're angry, liver. Liver, gallbladder. When you're bitter to the bone, the bones. So I had a lady in yesterday, and she said, my 22-year-old grandson, they keep doing surgery, now his leg's lost all the way up to here. It's a cancer of the bone. And she started going into other things about it, and she said, is there any hope for him? And I said, well, probably not unless he gives up the bitterness. She looked at me real funny, and I said, there's almost always, I mean, unless you're exposed to just truckloads of toxins, there's almost always emotional pain at the core of cancer. And I said, the bones are very much connected to bitterness. And, you know, it's not like there's some big sign, neon sign, you know, saying, hey, there's bitterness here, check out bitterness, do something about bitterness. You gotta do soul searching. You gotta say, what is going on with me? What am I feeling? What am I dealing with? What have I kept buried for years and years and years? Because when you bury stuff or ignore it, it just doesn't go away. It just plays out in your body. If you won't let it go this way, and I don't mean just talking it, I mean really dealing with it. If you won't let it go out this way, it'll affect you this way. So she said, oh my, she said his parents had the most bitter divorce you ever saw when he was very young. And how does a child deal with that? You know, how does a child successfully deal with that? So often they'll wear it, because they don't know how to deal with it. And we pretend like emotions don't matter. They matter more than anything. That's who we are. We feel, we hurt, we have pain, but we're afraid to deal with it, so we shove it. It's not productive. So, the
Do they have
throat.
this in California too?
What's that?
Do they have these gizmos that you do it with in California? You know,
Yes.
so it's kind of well known.
Yes, well known. In fact, I have probably a dozen clients who have a hand cradle, and I test them remotely.
Oh,
And I do EVOX remotely.
wow.
Yeah, so it can be done online. We connect online, and I can say, okay, put your first finger back on the hand cradle. You lifted your first finger. I can tell them exactly what they're doing. We're connected, very much connected online.
And would you say there's some good people in California?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I can probably help you with that. I can probably get you some ones. So, it's interesting. I mean, you can go real deep with this real fast, but you can almost look at different parts of your body. If you want to do your own soul searching, you can almost look at different parts of your body, and sometimes it'll give you a clue what's going on. So, I was at a conference once, and I was working with a woman. We were doing a practical working on each other, and she asked, and I found out she was a Christian, and she asked me to pray for her mother, and she said, my mother's dying of laryngeal cancer. And I said, ooh, your mama's been hiding a secret a long time. And she said, what? What'd you say? And I said, I'll bet your mom's been hiding something a long time. And she said, that's true, but I'm the only one in the family that knows it. How'd you know that? I said, well, when you shut off that fifth chakra, when you close down right here, and you don't speak up, or you don't speak your mind, or you hold a secret, you stop the clockwise spin. Now I'm going to get a little weird on you, because in the West, in this nation, they don't deal with energy fields. It doesn't mean they went away and energy fields only affect the Chinese. This is not true. We just don't know it. So what you don't know, you don't know. But I mean, even the scripture talks about us being spirit, soul, and body. How does the spirit manifest? We're fearfully and wonderfully made. God is light. What is light? Light is energy. We are full of energy. When our spirit leaves our body, what leaves? Is that light energy part of us. So the Chinese have told us for many, many years that there are acupuncture points all over the body, which are, they're windows, if you will, to the acupuncture fields. They're a way where you can get a measurement back. So it allows us to have biocommunication to the meridian fields in the body. So meridians are electrical pathways. Just like you have electrical wiring in a building, you have electrical pathways in your body. And when you have your hand on the hand cradle in my office, I'm tapping into your electrical meridians, because you have pathways, endpoint acupuncture points on the end of your fingers, that connect to all the organs and systems of your body. So you have 10 endpoint acupuncture points on each hand, and we're getting a feedback, a biofeedback from the imbalances in your body, because everything in nature can be measured. Parasites, viruses, bacteria, emotions, etc., they all have a particular vibrational pattern. So one thing may vibrate like this, and another thing may vibrate like this, and another thing may, so everything has a particular measurable vibrational pattern that can be mapped mathematically and logged into a computer program. And then the programs are organized according to their kind. All the parasite programs, or all the miasms, which are genetic predispositions, if you will, all the phenolics, all the allergy fields, whatever. There's a particular vibration that is consistent. It's the same every time. A roly-poly bug vibrates the same way every time, okay? A tapeworm, a particular type of tapeworm, vibrates the same way every time, okay? So when we're doing this electrodermal screening, we're getting feedback for the vibrational imbalances in the body. So that's how we get a look at what's going on in the body. So I was going somewhere with this, and I chased such a rabbit, now I'm not sure where I was going with this. Hello, somebody
Yes.
bring me back to planet
Chakras.
Chakras, meridians, yes. So you've got these meridians that tie all your organs and systems together. For example, all your wisdom teeth are on your heart meridian. So if you have infection in a wisdom tooth, you might be having heart palpitations and not realize it's coming from the infection in your wisdom tooth. Okay? You also have larger energy fields called chakras that run from the base of your spine to the top of your head. And these chakras are, I refer to them as nuclear power plants. They're like the big fields for your body, but they correspond to emotions. So your base chakra, number one, has to do with survival issues. So it's very, very base. It has just to do with survival issues. So if you are concerned about survival, you can actually throw your base chakra and have problems with organs or systems in that region. Even potentially, issues like prostate, or, because of what's in that region and the emotion associated with it. Then you've got vulnerability issues at the second chakra. So if you're feeling very vulnerable, and it's a negative vulnerability, you have power struggles that show up here in your stomach. Have you ever seen people who, they get nervous and their stomach gets tight, or they want to control something and they can't, and their stomach gets tight, or they get ulcers or whatever? Those type of things show up here. Then you got your heart chakra here. The heart chakra is over your lungs and your heart. The heart chakra is, well, I'll come back to how these work. Then you've got your fifth chakra, which is right at your throat. This is what I was talking about earlier. Then you've got your sixth chakra here, which has to do with belief systems, and this is your seventh chakra. This is your connection to God. So let me tell you how these work. If you have a married couple, they've been married for 50 years, they're madly in love, they're soulmates, one of them passes away. And how many of you have heard of somebody who had, somebody passed away, and within weeks or months, the other spouse passed away? The other spouse had nothing wrong with them, and they passed away because they lost their loved one, they lost their soulmate, they lost their other half. So how is this possible? It's possible because your chakras are on a clockwise spin all the time. That's the way they work. When you hear of the death of someone you love, it's shocking, and it stops your heart chakra from its clockwise spin, and it can start going on a counterclockwise spin and go backwards. If you don't will to live, if you don't choose to get over that, and if you don't let that thing go, let that pain go, and choose to move on, the backward spin can absolutely take your life. It can give you a heart attack and mess up your lungs for a time. So I had a little boy, a 9-year-old boy, who came to see me because he was having heart palpitations. A 9-year-old boy. And I'm thinking, okay, there's some emotional pain here. I was completely wrong. This boy, I asked the mother, I said, his heart chakra's showing up. And I said, has there been a divorce? Has there been major pain? She said, no. And I said, does he have a fan above his bed? And she said, yes. And I said, is he on a bunk bed? And she said, yes. He was on the top of a bunk bed, and I said, is the fan on a counterclockwise spin? She said, yes. I said, there's your problem. It was spinning the shotgun. You've got electrical field here. And that fan, and she said, that fan's very close to him. He can't hardly sit up without hitting it. So that fan was pulling his heart on a counterclockwise spin. I thought, usually when I see fourth chakra, it's heart pain. But you can have a spin right above your bed and have it pull your heart. So any fan above you, if you're going to use a fan at all, and I'm not a big fan of fans because of their strong spin and how it affects your energy fields. But if you've got a fan above your bed, it better be on a clockwise spin because it can mess up your electrical rhythms in your body. So these things actually affect you. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question about what clockwise.
Clockwise is if the clock is sitting on your chest, facing out, this is clockwise. This is clockwise. So clockwise, the clock is sitting on my chest and you're seeing it. This is 12 o'clock, this is 3 o'clock, this is 6 o'clock, this is 9 o'clock. This is clockwise. When a mama naturally wants to rub her baby's tummy because the baby has a stomach ache, the mama rubs clockwise, instinctively. Even if she's across from the baby, she rubs it clockwise, instinctively.
Clockwise for the baby.
Your appendix is on your right side. Your colon and your descending colon. That's the way you have a bowel movement, and that's the way you naturally rub. It's instinctive. You just and that's healthy for a good bowel movement. So just think of the clock in terms of the way you eliminate. You eliminate from right to left. So if the clock, if the fan is above you, the fan should be moving in a right to left motion above you, like this. Okay? Yeah.
They always tell us in massage therapy, when you're massaging the abdomen, always make sure you do it clockwise, because if you
Yes.
do it counterclockwise, you can stop them up for a long time.
Yes, you can. You can. So yeah.
I love ceiling fans because I love moving hair.
Right.
So if you've got it going clockwise, are they okay or not? I mean, I know they have electromagnetic frequency.
They have a strong field. Fans put out a big field. So I personally prefer not to have them close to me. So I don't mind if they're in the room, if they're a ways away, but I don't like a fan right above me. But I'm really sensitive to electromagnetic fields.
One direction is for winter and one's for summer.
I don't
because
buy into it. I
Yeah,
understand
one
it, I've
blows
heard it
it
all,
down.
but it's not, doesn't mean it's healthy. And it'll still move air if you have it going clockwise all the time. So,
Clockwise is the wind go up.
I don't know. All I know is it should be going clockwise.
I have a question about chakras. I always associated that with New Age.
Okay, that's a good question, and I'm kind of concerned about going into questions and answers yet because I'm afraid we may not get through everything, but these are good questions. And it's good you asked that question. So this is the deal. Her question, did everybody hear her question? I've always associated chakras with New Age. Okay? So it's a very good question, I'm glad you asked it. So I'm really bothered by the fact that the New Agers were able to jump into energy medicine and claim it as their own. I'm a Christian, and I'm serving the God of the universe that created everything. Now, who created energy? Who created the plants that are so amazingly awesome they don't have side effects a mile long that, that we hear on TV? You know, the smartest people on the planet, the most healed people on the planet should be Christians who are using what God created. Chakras are very real. Energy fields are very real. Just sit under a fan going counterclockwise and you'll get it. You know? Anybody who's had heart palpitations after their child did some stupid thing, or they lost a spouse, or they went through something really painful and they about had a heart attack over it, knows that there's a connection with all these things. So, yes, the New Age people jumped into this early. And I go to conferences and stuff all the time, and I'll have people say, wow, I'm surprised you're a Christian, and yet, you're into all this. And I'll go, wow, I'm surprised all my Christian buddies aren't into all this. This is God. I mean, God is light. What is light if not energy? And you can take Kirlian photography and you can see these things, for goodness sake. It's not as though they're not there. They're there. We've just decided that Eastern medicine and Eastern religion are the same thing.
Yeah.
And they're not. You can understand energy fields and you can work with chakras and meridians and get anytime you go for an EKG, guess what you're getting? You're getting biofeedback, which is what I do every day of my life. But we accept it from a medical doctor. So I've worked 10 years doing the type of work I'm doing in rural North Alabama, and I'm finally not doing this anymore, but I would spend 3 hours with every first-time client and sometimes longer. Because I just had to spend enough time with people to get them to understand that I'm not a witch doctor, and that I'm just working with the human body, and that this is all good. Now, I don't have to spend that much time anymore because I now have a reputation and people aren't afraid that I'm going to pull out a crystal ball or something. But goodness, I mean, to me it's just as plain as can be that creation works. It's gentle, it's healing, it's alive. And this is the thing you got to ask yourself. First of all, what's the training of someone? When you go to a practitioner, you got to ask yourself, what's their philosophy? What have they been trained in? Because whatever they have been trained in and whatever they believe is what's going to drive where your protocol goes. So I figured out a long time ago, all the doctors I'd ever seen were trained in drugs and medicine, in surgery. So everything led to drugs and surgery. But I learned from my own body, from having to figure out how to heal my own body, I learned that nature works. And nature's creation. And I'm not the healer. Your body is the healer. You were created to heal yourself. Now, I'm just a student of creation. And I love it. It's a wonderful study. And I think we all should be studying. So I'm just smart enough to realize that God had it figured out a long time ago. And if God's using energy, I'm using energy. If God's using plants, I'm using plants. It works. You know a tree by the fruit. What works, works. But boy, when you get a hold of this whole thing about emotions and subconscious pain and imprinted stuff that happened way back years ago when you were 3 years old, and you start resolving some of this stuff, you'll have more energy. You'll have more, there's a life force in a person that makes them tick. When they get depressed, when they lose the will to live, that life force starts dwindling. So, you got to go after life. Choose life. Yes.
Dr. Robertson, I know some of you knew him.
Yeah, I knew him.
He took those pictures. He paid a lot of money for them, but I saw them, and there actually is energy that comes from our body.
Oh, sure.
And it's amazing. But you know what you were saying about how people say, well, this is New Age, and I know I've heard that too. I know people say that about vegetarianism. They say, well, you can't be a believer. I mean, that's all New Age. It seems like Satan tries to say, well, this is his. Right. No, it's not his. Who had it in the beginning?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of that thinking, I think, comes because of Eastern, the Chinese have been on the planet a whole lot longer than we have, and they understand. I mean, they were telling us years ago what meridians connected to what organs and where they were and how the pathways worked through the body, and they didn't have any equipment to teach them that. They learned it. Yeah. And when we finally got technology, and this is how it happened in the West, we have to prove everything. So they took this guy in death row, and shot him up with a radioactive substance and put him under an x-ray machine, and he lit up like a Christmas tree, and they were able to see all the pathways exactly as the Chinese had said. So we have electrical pathways, if you will, called meridians. And you can physically see them if you shoot somebody up with a radioactive substance and put them under an x-ray machine. You can see them. But these pathways are what connect the dots in our system.
I know that you want to go on, and I don't want to take on, but in India, see, those cultures were all like 2,000 years before Christ came. Well, did God love his people 2,000 years before? He did. And he gave them certain gifts, sort of like the Jews, you know, that they were forerunners of Jesus. Only way forerunners. I mean, God created all the humans, and then, like you say, fearfully and wonderfully made. So I think of it like that. The other thing is that New Age didn't even exist as a word, and that it was the people who were putting booksellers out there that they had to put a whole bunch of stuff in one place. And it's so ignorant, just even the word, because they put in New Age things like, you know, cultures that had been thousands of years. They just didn't know. And then we all adopted, oh, New Age, but we're just as ignorant. And I love what you say about respecting God's world and his people and his history and, you know.
Well, you can't make a modality sort of godly or not godly. Everything has to do with maybe, if you're going to say that, I mean, everything would have more to do with the person using the modality. But the body, there's a certain science behind the body, and there's a certain mechanism of the body that is just consistent, and it can be proven. And we do have structure, we do have the electrical fields, we do have the chemistry. And there is that three-part of every human body, just like there's, you know, spirit, soul, and body. So you can't make a science. It's not a religion or not a religion. It just is what it is. It is the body. But I wanted to just in the little bit of time I've got left, I wanted to just at least expose you a little bit, and I'll pass these around. Expose you to electrodermal screening. This is sort of a part of a printout that I give people when they come in. This was a woman that came in, and I typically will bring something to a class like this that's just recent, so it's fresh in my mind. This lady came in to see me on the 30th of last month, and it was fascinating because she's only a few years older than me, but she's probably, chronologically, she's maybe 30 years older than me, but she's got to be at least, I mean, I'm sorry, about 7 years older than me, but she looks probably 30 years older than me because she was so worn down with a lot of emotional stuff, with poor diet for years, you know, the whole thing, and so life had kind of taken a toll, and there was really no color to her skin, and a lot of just looking at her, she was very depressed. There was a lot of big problems with her. So I ran this test, and I'm going to pass this around. The way my EDS test works, I see a lot of modalities first, then it goes into organs and organ parts and systems, TCM points and different things, and then it goes into the detail from the test. So with hers, the modalities or activities, if you will, protocols like cleansing, like colon hydrotherapy, or suggesting foot detox, or suggesting acupuncture or something. The modalities she was testing for all had to do with moving her body, with stimulating her body. So when I look at these modalities, I don't say, okay, Mrs. Smith, you should do this, and you should do this, and you should do this, and you should do this. I say, what is this telling me? What feedback am I getting from her? You know, because I'm going to run so many tests, there's no way I could give her all the products and all the protocols they're going to ask for. What I do is run all the tests and then say, what's the message here? Okay, you follow what I'm saying? You know, it's like not saying, stepping back so that you're getting the big picture. So I'm looking, I'm seeing massage therapy, electroacupressure, homeopathics, laser puncture therapy, exercise movements and therapies, manual lymphatic drainage. So every one of these is saying, get this body moving. This person really needs life breathed back in her body. And then when I run the organs, there's a midline that runs down the center of this test, which is sort of her range number, and anything to the far, where it's red, to far out to your right, is showing what's far out of range, and it gives you no numerical value for it, so I can see what organs are most stressed. And it was her liver and her arteries and her central nervous system and on and on. And to make a long story short, she had 9 mercury fillings in her mouth, 4 root canals, several bridges, several crowns. Most of the mercury was under crowns, which meant it was going to cost a small fortune to get the most toxic non-radioactive substance on the planet out of her mouth, strongest neurotoxin on the planet out of her mouth. And it was going to cost her a lot. And once you get the mercury out, you're partway there. If you don't do mercury detox, you've done nothing to get it out of your brain, your prostate, your colon, and your feet, and everywhere else. And so, just looking in her mouth and looking at her structure and the way she looked and the way she was carrying herself, before I even saw this test, I knew she was in trouble. And then we run this test, and she's got all this emotional stuff showing up. Afraid, anger, disconnected, strong. I mean, the anger was real strong. And the heavy metals, the particular, the ethyl mercury, which is from the mercury fillings, showing up. She had lots of neurotransmitter needs and mycotoxins. Long story short, I ended up giving her more products than I normally give a person because she was just completely depleted and not using anything good. But I also encouraged her and told her how she'd get the mercury out and basically told her that if she would do these things, that her body would spring back. And this woman was so without hope. She knew before she came in that she was dying. And she looked like she was dying. And I mean, her whole disposition and everything about her it was probably the grim person I have ever seen in my life. And it was almost overwhelming for me. And I don't usually get overwhelmed too easy, but I just kind of sat back and said, look, we need to do this, we need to do this is not going to happen overnight, we've got to do this, and we got to do this, and we got to do this, and if you can afford to do all this, because, you know, all those crowns and all that stuff is pricey. And so I told her some places that would, she'd get a better price. She also was full of Lyme's disease because the mercury had created pathways through her body, and that's why she was in so much pain. So I imprinted into a Lyme's base. I told her to get off the diet she was on. She was drinking 4 sodas a day, and you know, so we got a lot of stuff turned around. So she came back in to, Wednesday, yesterday. Her husband called me on Tuesday, and her husband called me just to thank me for helping her. He said she's really doing well. She's the first time she's ever had hope, and it's amazing what we're seeing. And he was going on and on. So she came in Wednesday because, and this was about 2 weeks after her visit, she came in for colon hydrotherapy and foot detox. And she left, and I attend church with her husband's friend. Okay, so her husband works with this guy that goes to church with me. He's the one who sent her, told the husband to get her to come to him. So I go to church Wednesday night, last night, and this guy I go to church with, who was working with the husband, said the husband got a call yesterday from the wife, crying. And he said she was just crying, couldn't stop crying, and was saying, I don't know when I felt this good. I don't know when I've ever felt this good. And she hasn't even gotten the mercury out of her mouth. But she's got hope, and she really is feeling better. And she's got hope. She had been to doctor after doctor after doctor, and nobody could tell her what was wrong with her, and all her symptoms were very obscure. But she felt bad for about 2 or 3 days after she first came. She had a little bit of a healing crisis, but you know, because there was so much changing so fast. But after she got over that, she just started doing better and better. So, but what really got me about her, and this is when I really started getting overwhelmed, I've got this hormone test I can run, and you see the baseline down the middle, that red line, real thin red line down the middle? So anything to the far right of the red line means inflamed or irritation or whatever. Anything to the left of that line means weakened. I'd much rather see inflamed than weakened, I promise. She had nothing on the right side at all. Everything. This is the way this woman looked. I mean, her adrenals, her gallbladder, estrogen, colon, thyroid, iodine, ovaries, adrenals, liver was functioning at 0.63, vitamin B 0.59, progesterone, testosterone, pituitary gland. I can't even read it. it's point something, I can't read it, but it was the lowest one. It's like it's barely functioning. How do you function if your pituitary gland's not functioning? So, and when she came in, the intake form she filled out, these were her complaints. Muscle aches, especially the legs and the hands, stomach sickness after eating, always tired, slow metabolism. Told I have neuropathy, probably fibromyalgia, knee replacement, high blood pressure and cholesterol, controlled by meds, on and on and on. It's unbelievable. I shake people around. It's just unbelievable. And my last story, I'm gonna have to probably make this one my last story. I brought this woman's test too. This woman came in and her complaints were all about basically her skin issues. She had a baseball cap on. She had a spot on her head on the left side. It was the size of, it was about the size of a baseball, and her hair was completely gone in this hole, and the skin was very raw and red. And she had a smaller one on the other side, and on this arm, she had these blotches that were raw and big and angry. She had a really bad one on her shoulder. She had them all over, but these were the primary areas. And she was seeing things kind of coming and going through these holes, and occasionally she'd see something almost like fly out. But it wasn't lice. It wasn't scabies. And her husband had stopped sleeping with her because he was afraid of her creepy crawlies. I mean, it was really bad, and her skin and her face looked really bad. And she said, look, I used to be a beautiful woman. She said, this thing's eating me up. So I ran all my tests and looked at everything. And this was a story. She was pretty much eating a bunch of trash all the time and had for years. She was eating a lot of sugar. So she's kind of rotting from the inside. She had gotten exposed to a bunch of stuff, but when I ran my microbial test on her, and I'll send this one around, this was fascinating. One of her complaints was that she would swell now and then. She would just swell up, and then she would go down. And she would just swell up. It had nothing to do with how much she ate. So the very first item on here is leishmania. Now that may not mean anything to you, but that means a lot to me. And it was like minus 141, which is huge. The next one is Bacillus abortus, which is a bacteria. I'm sorry, it's a bacterial issue that causes you to naturally miscarry. She had elephantitis, thus the swelling, and she had mange.
Oh my.
Besides a bunch of other stuff. And so she was so raw and so irritated, I knew I couldn't put what I wanted to put on her skin. Well, the first thing I did is talk to her about her diet. I said, you know, all these sodas and all this junk's a thing in the past. I said, which do you like more, the parasites or the soda? So sometimes I just got to get in people's face and tell them how it is. I said, you got a choice. You can either have your sugar or you can have your parasites. You know, I mean, you can have the sugar and the parasites, or you can eat well and get rid of them. So this is the choice. So she said, okay, it's gone. That's gone. So, because she was really desperate. And she was believing her husband was not being very faithful too. So the whole thing, you know, she felt like one bad thing had led to another bad thing, which led to another bad thing. So she was really hurting. And so the story goes, her husband had grabbed her on the arm. That was messed up. At one point he had grabbed her on her arm because they were around her sister's, there's so many convoluted stories, it's unbelievable, but her sister was being unfaithful with this doctor. And they were at a party or someplace where he was, and her husband grabbed her on the arm and said, don't you say anything in front of your sister, in front of that doctor. And so she saw this as a real, you know, he was in her face, he was real nasty with her, and she didn't like the situation to begin with, but when he grabbed her here and said that, she got real hurt. And that's where it started. It was right where he had grabbed her. Remember what I said about emotions? So this is where it broke out, and there's stories behind all of it. I can't go into it. It would take too long, but it's a fascinating story. So the long and short of it was, I talked to her about the emotional stuff. We worked on that a little bit. I gave her cocoa oil, which I knew would kill all the junk on the outside without hurting her, because I've used it for real nasty, tender areas of the body that you can't put anything else on. And when you want to get rid of bad bugs, you can get rid of bad bugs with it. And sure enough, it cleaned it up. Just completely cleaned it up. She came in like a week later, and this was This was half what it had been. Her hair was, the red was gone. She had actually put it all over her body because she was so freaked out about everything. And she said,